Come on, welcome aboard Monday. Indiana Sports Beat coming to you from hole number 6 here at the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios. It's a blustery day out there, but a lot to get to. Dylan Sims on with us as always. Dylan, how are you, sir?
Good, Jim. It's Monday morning. We have IU basketball today at the Maui Invitational. We have football 5-1. It's a good week.
Definitely Monday. Here we are. Yeah, right here in the afternoon. Indiana be playing here in a little bit. Don Fisher's going to be on with us, and so you'll be able to hear him or hear the game shortly thereafter this afternoon as the Indiana Hoosiers open up play at Maui, or not in Maui, in Asheville. It's got a weird deal, but against Providence, that's going to be a tough game. Look forward to talking about that. Also, IU football, a lot of news, of course. Number 10 back in the top 10 of the AP poll. Lots of stuff to unpack there. A win over Maryland this weekend as they continue to roll in the Big Ten East, Dylan. We've got Ohio State now, one cancellation away, and I just asked Dylan in the break, so what do you think Indiana's chances of playing in the Big Ten championship game are now? And you want to say what your answer was?
I said 0, and maybe I'm being a little bit defeatist. I just don't see Ohio State. They could suit up a JV team against Michigan State and probably win that game. So if they had to, they could do that. And that might have to be what they do next week. But
a couple of things actually. First of all, I think they're gonna have a tough time because of what I bet it comes out, but we don't know. I'm just guessing, prognosticating. But I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out that they've got it's a lot of deepness there. But you're right, and they would have to try to do that. But here's another caveat. Let's throw on the back end. Who's that last game against?
Michigan.
Game. So who now holds Ryan Day's fate in his hand? And by fate, that's a euphemism. Because Ryan Day threatened to hang 100 on Michigan, and they probably can and probably would have. Now Jim Harbaugh can sit back and go, yeah, let's see about that. Just say he can send these guys out to the bars. Go party it up, boys. Who would love more than to be the team than to pull the rug and pull the plug on Ohio State's Big Ten title chances and potential college football? I don't think it would. Now, seeing to here, it would not affect them in the college football playoffs. This is where I agree with you. They're going to it's going to be Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, maybe Notre Dame. I'm not sure about that fourth one, but it's going to be those three because that's who TV wants. And TV will get what they want, especially this year, I think. I can't imagine that. But that's the thing. Ohio State can still play in that and not be affected by not playing the Big Ten championship.
Right. And that's the thing. It is, yeah, maybe Ohio State does get shut out of the Big Ten championship. I still don't think that happens. I think you're right. They still get in the playoff. But yeah, you're right about Jim Harbaugh. He does have a lot of leverage here. The only thing is Jim Harbaugh is an old school kind of guy. He doesn't strike me as the type of guy that would pull something petty like that. Although, he's maybe at the end of his tenure at Michigan, who knows? So maybe he kind of goes out in a blaze of glory and does something fun like that. Who knows what's right now?
It would be crazy, but it's just going to be interesting. I don't think, and I understand why you're saying what you're saying, because normally that would be me saying that they'll change the rules, they'll do whatever. But I don't think that they can. I think Kevin Warren he's got so much going on around him right now that he is screwed up that he cannot even dare think about touch one more thing. If he touches one more thing, it's like his house of cards will collapse on him. This has not been a good year for Kevin Warren, and we're not even halfway through the sports season. So I don't think he really can't have something else go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough to change the rules midstream now. And obviously, a lot of Indiana fans would be extremely upset. On the other hand, he is going to face pressure from Ohio State. Gene Smith, he said earlier this week when the game against Illinois was canceled, he said that there hasn't been any discussions about kind of changing the requirements to play in the game yet. He said he thought those discussions might come up later. So I'm assuming Kevin Warren will be getting a lot of pressure from a lot of sides here, and we'll see which way he decides to go.
But there's no doubt, like you said, Ohio State is going to do everything they can to complete those games because they have enough talent to take care of business. But we did see Michigan State, speaking of the Spartans, Sparty rose up and knocked off the other team that we thought was just going to make it in there. But we've got Don with us now. Don, sir, how are you?
Jim, how are you?
Doing fine. Just a lot to just talking with Dylan Sin here. With so much to unpack with this week. Busy. Speaking of busy for you, you've got a basketball game later today, but we've got the win over Maryland this weekend. They're back in the top 10. Just so much going on with the Hoosiers.
Well, without question, you're correct on that basis. They've got 3 basketball games this week, and obviously getting ready for Wisconsin on the side of things. It's going to be a very busy week, to say the least, but a very interesting one as well for both football and basketball.
On football side of things, of course, another win, a big win, because everyone was fearing a letdown, and then there was the issue with Michael Penix going down. Some questions with that. Positives with Jack Tuttle coming in and seeing that he did a great job in coming in, and the defense continued a stellar job. But of course, questions with Michael Penix, as we'll find out later, more today, hopefully.
The fact that they employ different schemes to get the run game going in this contest, and the fact that Stevie Scott was brilliant in the Wildcat itself. He had 24 carries for 88 yards, or 80 yards, I guess, net in the ball game, but he scored 3 touchdowns. The Wildcat scheme that they employed, along with running back Tim Baldwin Jr., a coming out party for the freshman from Virginia, who had a terrific game, 16 carries for 106 yards. All those things in this game were just critical, and to finally find a running game that really helps this offense become more balanced, I think, is a big factor down the road here at the end of the season. But it's super critical in this ball game because, as everyone knows, in the first half, Mike Penix really struggled with his throwing. He was, I think, 2 of 15 at that point. He did get going a little bit in the second half, and on the first drive of the second half, he had 4 completions in that drive to get him down to before it stalled, and gave up the ball on downs. And then, he comes up, runs the football in the next series because the Indian safety got the ball back in good field position. Penix ran the football down toward the end zone and looked like he might even score, but he was chased out of bounds there, and all of a sudden he got bumped a little bit. I don't know if he tweaked an ankle. I don't know if he's got a foot problem. I don't know if it's a knee issue. We just know it's a lower is what we've been told, and he was in a lot of pain. So it sounds like he may not be available for this week's ball game. If he's not, Jack Tuttle came in and played very well, as you pointed out, and Jack is a kid that's got a ton of talent, great arm. The only thing he lacks is experience, and he's probably going to get it if Michael Penix is not available.
Yeah, and it harkens back, and I don't want to make a comparison to the Denver Broncos with Peyton Manning when they won the Super Bowl, but that was a team that was led by a superior defense, and Peyton Manning managed the offense. And this defense, they're that good. Man, they are just continuing to take the ball away from teams. The interceptions, the takeaways, they got 18 takeaways in 7 games. It's crazy. That's 5 more, I think, than all of last season. This defense is just playing lights out, and one of the best in the country.
Well, there's no question that the defense has been a big story this entire season. They gave up 237 yards in the first half of this game against Maryland, but only 3. So they bend but don't break. That's one of their scenarios. And they only gave up. They gave up no yards in the second half until the second and third teamers came in and gave up that last drive, last score that Maryland had. I think a 73-yard drive there that Tom Allen was not pleased with, but he was giving those guys an opportunity to perform out there. And without question, the defense did its job because they had held the minus 10 yards up to that point in the second half. So this defense is spectacular at times. There's no question about that. They do make some mistakes, but it's partly because they employ such an aggressive attacking mode all the time. You're going to make some mistakes every now and then, but the defensive backfield to me is the best I've ever seen in Indiana, not just from a pure talent standpoint, but from a depth standpoint, because it seems like no matter who they put out there, that guy does his job, and that's just spectacular.
It is, and they are fun to watch. And looking forward is down to this week. They will go up to Wisconsin, a great challenge. You said we don't know whether or not they'll have Michael Penix, but they will have this defense, and that's going to be fun to watch. Now in a position with Ohio State, one missed game away from Indiana potentially being eligible for the Big Ten championship. There's so much craziness going on. We can't even begin to prognosticate all of it, but there's just a lot of craziness, and the possibilities are just continuing to lay out there before them.
Well, there's no question, and obviously on shows like this, we can talk about the speculation and all the opportunities that might be for this Indiana football team. But right now, they got to take care of business with the Badgers, because even though Wisconsin's only played 3 games and they lost their last outing to Northwestern, and obviously they were off last week because of another cancellation, this is a team that will give Indiana fits if they are able to possess the football. And I'm talking about Wisconsin, because that's what they love to do. They love to keep the football out of your hands, grind it out on the ground, pound you into submission. And they did that to the 2 of the opponents that they've had this year, Illinois and Michigan. When they did play, they just absolutely pounded them in the ground. And the Northwestern game that they lost a couple of weeks ago, they still had more yards, more time of football. It was just that Northwestern turned them over 3 times. Their quarterback, the redshirt freshman quarterback at Wisconsin, threw 3 interceptions in that game, gave Northwestern field position, and Northwestern took advantage of it, much like Indiana does with their defense. So that's why Northwestern beat them. It wasn't because Northwestern stopped them necessarily, and they did hold them down a little bit, and they contained them, let's put it that way. But it was not the norm for Wisconsin to get beat in a game like that when they outgained their opponents by about 150 yards. So all that said, that's really what Indiana's football team has got to concentrate on this week. And we can speculate all we want about playoffs and that type of thing, but at this juncture, Indiana's still got to take care of business.
Absolutely. And then today, your busy week really kicks in. Gear, you mentioned 3 basketball games. The Maui Invitational down in Asheville starts. Providence, a tough test to start off. A team that is good front and back. They've got a big man down low, and they've got some really good guard play.
Yeah, they do. They're a very good basketball team. And here's the thing. Ed Cooley, who's their head coach, he's been there 10 years. This guy does a tremendous job of filling positions on his team, taking guys and putting them into the positions and the style of basketball that he likes to play. He loves physical play. He loves defensive play. It fits right into the Big Ten mode of college basketball. And without doubt, they're going to be big, strong, and physical, and they're going to give Indiana a real test in this first game of the Maui Invitational. And if Indiana doesn't play probably close to their best basketball, they will have a tough time beating this team. The Friars are really good, and they've got a lot of talent on that ball club. They got size, and they're physical, and Indiana's size is a little bit limited now with Joey Brunk on the sideline. I don't know his status for today's game, but I don't think that sounds good. That said, there's going to be a lot on the shoulders of Race Thompson and Jackson Davis and the bigs for this Indiana basketball team, because I think they're a little bit limited if they don't have Brunk with them.
Yeah, and they're going to have to knock some shots down, hit their free throws, and take care of the ball without that, because it is going to be that in the middle, man. David Duke and Nate Watson have done such a great job for Providence, both, like I said, and when you have a team that is loaded on the front and the back, that offers many difficulties.
Yeah, there's no question. Like I said, I think the physicality of this team is going to give Indiana some trouble, and I think the Hoosiers are going to have to play one of their best basketball games just to beat this team. The early season is always a question mark, and you just never know what you're going to get. Obviously, both of these teams dominated in the first game that they played last Wednesday. Fairfield was the opponent for Providence, and they didn't have a chance. They were just totally outmanned. And Tennessee Tech was pretty much in the same boat with Indiana this past week. I think the thing that did come out of the IU ball game that I liked the best was the fact that they only turned the ball over 8 times. Archie said that was going to be a critical factor for this team this year. That rebounding was going to be a critical factor, and Indy out-rebounded Tennessee Tech by 3 boards. So I think those two things are going to be interesting to watch in this game as well. And you're right, Indiana's got to shoot the ball much better than they did in the first ball game, especially at the free throw line and from behind the arc, because you're not going to get it done if you're only shooting less than 50% from the free throw line and less than 30% from behind the arc.
Well, Don, I know you've got a busy week, so we're going to let you get out of here a little early today and save some of that voice because it starts today, but we can't appreciate you enough. Good luck on all the calls this week, and we look forward to talking to you next Monday.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you. There's the great Don Fisher, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. On the call today is Indiana taking on Providence in the first game of the Maui Invitational down at Asheville. So make sure you find Don on the call for that. That's how you want to listen to an Indiana basketball game. We got lots more coming up. Matt Taylor's going to join us. We'll talk a little bit about the Colts and then more about the Indiana football and basketball. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Back with more right after this. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat here on this Monday. Time to go back to school, but I don't think not too many people are in school. Everyone's virtual learning. Some are, right? School's been crazy, Dylan. Schools up there, is Fort Wayne, are they virtual right now, or what's?
It's a mixed bag. There are some virtual, some in person, and you kind of have the option as a parent to decide what you want to do.
I just talked to someone, just texted me that is a parent that has 2 kids. One is virtual and one is not. And I'm like, oh, well, that can't be much fun. Matt Taylor from Indianapolis Colts is joining us now. Matthew, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, guys, I'm good. How are you?
Cannot complain. Just sitting in here. Big weekend. A lot of sports going on, of course. Of course, the Colts had a big game that I was a little embarrassed. I was telling Dylan Sinwith, I was watching the game yesterday, but I got to it late, and so I'm watching it for a while in the second half, and then they started running a play that I'm like, why are they doing that? And I looked up and realized that they were actually losing. Didn't even know they were losing the game, but tough loss for the Colts yesterday.
Oof. Yeah, that's putting it mildly. It was a big game, and it's a big loss for the Colts because it now hurts their chances for the AFC South Championship. It hurts their wild card stock. You know, the Titans are now 8-3. The Colts are 7-4. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but that's essentially a 2-game lead for the Tennessee Titans because the 2 teams split the head-to-head series with the 2 games. Each team won a game. So the next tiebreaker is conference record, or excuse me, it's division record. And the Titans now are 3-1. The Colts are 1-2 in AFC South play. So only 5 games left, and I think it's gut wrench time. I think it's gut check time for this Colts team. We're going to see what this team is made of. It's a bottom line business. There's no such thing as a good excuse in the NFL for not getting the job done. But just from a fan perspective, just from a football purist standpoint, you would have loved to have seen both teams really play with a full deck. The Colts had a lot of injuries yesterday. They had guys missing due to the COVID protocols. The virus kind of struck at the worst time for the Colts, so they were down by the end of the game. They were down 6 key starters. But again, that being said, Tennessee played without some key guys as well, and they just they controlled the game and they won handily, 45-26, and now they're in the driver's seat for sure.
And as you look at this, the way their schedule is constructed, I don't think it did them much favors toward the end, because when you play teams multiple times, I saw it in high school this year. My high school team played the same team twice, beat them easily, lost to them in the playoffs. And now you're talking about professionals, man. You're playing the Titans a couple weeks apart. You got the Texans a couple weeks apart. These are professionals. It's hard to beat guys twice that close together. They do this for a living.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy you use. I kind of equated it to, around here in central Indiana, it's kind of like Brownsburg versus Avon. Those 2 teams know each other so well. The communities are separated by about 5-6 miles. They're in the same conference, so they're going to play each other in the regular season. They're in the same sectional because of, the geography. And so, yeah, to your point, they might draw each other in the first round of the sectional, and then they have to play each other, twice in a month. And that's what we're seeing here in the NFL. We're starting to see that a lot more in the last couple of years, where they, will play, they'll schedule NFL, or I should say division teams twice in a month's time or 2 times in 3 weeks, which you saw with the Colts and Titans. And then you're going to see that with the Colts and Texans. They're going to play each other twice in the next 3 weeks here in the month of December. So it does make it difficult. The teams already know each other so well, but when the Colts go down to Nashville and they win by 17 points and control the second half, that leaves a sour taste in the Titans' mouth. And I'm sure, they're chomping at the bit to get back on the field and play the Colts, 2 weeks later. And I think it kind of fuels that fire and allows that short-term memory to come back. If you're Tennessee, to kind of avenge that loss and give them credit. They knew everything that was on the line in yesterday's game in terms of, being in the driver's seat for the AFC South championship. They haven't won the AFC South since 2008. They just came out with more urgency, and they executed better. They controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And they just really took it to the Colts, and it really wasn't close. I mean, the Colts, in the second half, they got some, late game touchdowns, and they had to go for 2, and they didn't get either 2-point conversions. And that just kind of, doomed the Colts in terms of getting back and on the scoreboard. But yeah, Derrick Henry ran all over the Colts in the rushing game. The Colts had a hard time, building up chemistry and rhythm on offense in the second half. Anthony Costanzo goes down at left tackle. You didn't have Ryan Kelly. You didn't have DeForest Buckner. You didn't have Danico Autry. You didn't have Jonathan Taylor. You didn't have Bobby Okereke. Those are some key players, and it's just a shame the Colts didn't play that game with again, closer to a full deck of cards on Sunday.
Yeah, Matt, we were talking earlier, but what's the Colts defense has been one of the best in the league all year. And then yesterday, Ryan Tannehill averaged 10 yards per attempt. Derrick Henry averaged 6.6 yards per carry. Is that something that worries you about the defense long term, or is it something that it's just Derrick Henry being Derrick Henry and the Titans being prepared for this game because they played them before, and a combination of the Colts missing some guys? So what was your take on the defense yesterday?
Yeah, defensively, I think my biggest concern going forward with that unit is just getting off the slow starts. I mean, we're talking about in the last 2 first halves here to the Packers and the Titans, the Colts have allowed 9 touchdowns, over 550 yards, and 63 points. I mean, so that's just not going to get it done, and it's a bigger trend, more so than just the last 2 weeks. Since week 5 at Cleveland, the Colts are allowing on average 193 yards per half in the first half, and almost 20 points in the first halves of games. So yeah, it's definitely concerning. Again, I feel like every time I come on this show, I talk about the tale of 2 halves with the defense. That has to get fixed. That has to be remedied here, because I know in the last 2 weeks you're down 28-14 to the Packers. You're down 35-14 to the Titans. You're 1-1 in those games. That's just not going to happen going forward. I mean, you're down 14, 21 points respectively at 2 intermission breaks here. 9 times out of 10, NFL teams are going to lose. You just can't overcome that. NFL teams are too good. They're too deep. They're too sound. They just don't make that many mistakes to open the door for you to come back and overcome a 14-point hole or a 21-point hole. So, yeah, it's definitely concerning why the second half defense has been so much better than the first half. But here lately, the first half problems are outweighing the second half adjustments for sure.
The college game. I'm not sure how much you got to watch this weekend. Indiana, of course, with another big win over Maryland, but came possibly at a cost. Michael Penix went down early in the third quarter of that game. He was struggling, man. As I was sitting there watching that game, his passes he was just missing bad. He wasn't like just off. He was not even hitting these guys in the hand sometime, which was really unusual for a guy who had been so accurate. So it was kind of odd to watch, Matt.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking the same thing watching that game, and you obviously cover the Hoosiers more in depth and follow it more closely on a professional level than I do. But do we know for sure that Michael Penix wasn't already banged up going into that game? Because that's just how bad he looked. He wasn't stepping into throws. He was overthrowing guys. He was missing some people just with the inaccuracies. Do we know he wasn't already banged up going into that game? Because it sure looked like it.
Dylan, we don't, but that sure was something that kept popping up on my timeline a lot as soon as he did get hurt, that he looked that way. But he certainly looked off. And in the post-game press conference, Dylan, Tom Allen was asked that, and he said that he was just off, that he had a good practice.
Yeah, that was the interesting part, is that Tom Allen kind of seemed as confused as the rest of us by Michael Penix's first half performance, and that leads me to believe that Penix was healthy when that game began. Because Tom Allen said it was just one of those days, but that seems like going from 1 week to the next, that was about as different of a performance as I've ever seen. I don't know about you, Matt. That's about as different of a performance I've ever seen from 1 week to the next.
Yeah, I mean, the offense just looked shaky, and I watched that game with my dad and my brother, who are both, big IU sports fans. And, I guess it's good that at the end of the game, we kind of looked at each other and we said, have we reached the point of our IU football fandom here in 2020 where we're unsatisfied with how that game ended? They won by whatever it was, 17, 16 points. But we didn't take much satisfaction out of a win. And if you're an IU football fan historically, you'll take any win, anytime, anywhere, no matter the score. But that was a very sloppy game. Obviously, you're a little bit, uneven after the game in terms of how you feel because of just how the team executed, and then of the future with Michael Penix going forward, heading into a big game against a very good team in Wisconsin. I saw that's a 10-point line for the Badgers coming up this Sunday. I don't know how much that has to do with Michael Penix's injury and his up in the air status right now. But I thought 10 points, for a team that's ranked higher than Wisconsin, albeit on the road. I understand that, but I thought 10 points for Wisconsin was a little rich there, in my opinion. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
They haven't learned, Matt. They just haven't learned. Indiana has covered the spread every game this year, and that includes the 21-point behemoth they put on them with Ohio State. So, yeah, I agree with you. I'm like, I'll take, you want to give them 10 points? I'll take Indiana 10 points against virtually anybody in the country right now, especially if you have Michael Penix. But yeah, I'm sure that line will probably fluctuate depending on that. But hey, this is a great opportunity because of this craziness, the COVID craziness in Ohio State. A lot of prognostication, of course. But if they were to miss one more game, Indiana is in position to play in the Big Ten championship game, which is, for a crazy year, that's pretty crazy still.
It is. This is the year of 2020 where you can make plans, but don't count on those plans going through. And just, ask the Colts. I mean, ask anybody in the NFL right now. I mean, the 49ers can't play home games. They can't even practice in their team's facility because of the COVID restrictions out in their county where they're located. The Broncos yesterday had to play with a backup, undrafted rookie wide receiver at quarterback because their entire quarterback room got close contacted with the COVID cases. You got guys on Friday and Saturday for the Colts popping up on the COVID list. You prepare, but you have to. I mean, for me, just from just a basic example on my end, Saturdays for me used to be, that was kind of like, getting ready for games in the NFL. That was kind of like the one day where you kind of like dotted your I's and crossed the T's and you made your final preparations for the game. Whereas now Saturday is like a full blown work day because there's just roster move after roster move after roster move with injuries and COVID guys and guys being, brought up off of IR because there's no restrictions there. There's COVID guys coming off the COVID list, guys going on the COVID list. It's just a big old jigsaw puzzle this year. And, case in point, Friday night, that Illinois-Ohio State game gets canceled, less than 12 hours before it's supposed to be played. So anything can happen, and you just kind of hold your breath waiting for these games to get canceled and cross your fingers that they get played. And obviously, in this case, you hope for IU to keep winning to have a chance at that Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, Dylan up in Fort Wayne, he doesn't necessarily cover Michigan, but you're up in that area and cover Purdue for those guys. How about this is the Big Ten this weekend? Purdue losing to Rutgers. Northwestern, who I thought was just going to steamroll their way to the Big Ten championship because they had it paved, a golden paved road, and they lose to Michigan State. And then Jim Harbaugh, Man, I don't even know what else to say about Jim Harbaugh. You may be seeing him back in the NFL. Dylan, Matt's probably going to be seeing him back in the NFL soon.
Yeah, that is he's really struggling right now up there at Michigan, and the Lions have a coaching opening right now, so maybe they'll kick the tires on that. But who knows? It's a tough situation right now up there in Ann Arbor.
They're going to throw him to the Lions. Matt, it's just been fun to be college football. Yes.
You're a dork. You're an absolute dork.
You got to, man. I had another one last week. I threw PJ Fleck under the boat last week, so that was another one. So I'm rocking him up, man. I'm just rocking him up. But a fun week, man. What do you got coming up this week?
This week is a normal week, and I welcome it. With last week being Thanksgiving, it always kind of throws a wrench into things with the preparation. I don't get onto people too much, but family and friends, they say, "Oh, you're going to have Thursday off for Thanksgiving. That'll be good." I'm like, no, it's just Thursday in my book. It's just another work day, another day of preparation in the NFL. The league never sleeps and never stops, especially during the season. So. Yeah, that was Thursday wasn't much of a turkey day for me. It was a grinder of a day to get ready for Sunday. So welcoming a normal week here where I don't have to do 3 days worth of work and 2 to have a little bit of a half day with family. But it was great. But yeah, it's all these games now for the Colts are really important. I mean, you're talking about 5 games to go. The margin for error is pretty slim, and the Colts are trying to win that AFC South, but more importantly, trying to get in as a wild card team. There's 3 wild card teams now in each conference, so we'll see what the Colts can do. It's a crowded mess in the AFC, so they got to keep on winning and hope now going forward that the Titans stub their toe a few times.
Absolutely, and we'll keep on watching, make sure they get there, brother. I hope you have a great week. How's the new baby?
He's doing well. I appreciate you asking. Yeah, he's this close to crawling. He's 7+ months, so he's getting close. But once he's on the move, you guys know, once he's on the move, it's a game changer. It changes everything in terms of how you parent and how you have to protect him from getting into stuff. So we'll see what happens. But I think by Christmas he's going to be mobile.
Be fun, man. We're looking forward to it. Looking forward to you each and every week. Cannot thank you enough, buddy. Appreciate you.
All right, guys. Thanks. It'd be good.
Thank you, sir. Matt Taylor, the voice of the Indianapolis Colts, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat. Matt, Dylan, always fun talking with Matt. But the Colts, dang, God, that was a tough one. And they've got, you talk about no margin for error like the Big Ten. They have no margin for error. And they've got the Steelers on their schedule yet to play. I'm like, man, they're trying to get stuff in line. I'm like, that's not who you want to. That's like looking up and seeing a freight train coming at you.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're right. I think the way to frame it is they have no margin of error left. They had a chance. They'd beaten the Titans. They could have dropped a game or 2 down the stretch probably because they had that tiebreaker, but now they don't have the tiebreaker anymore. So they're going to have to win several games down the stretch here to get in the playoffs against some good teams, including the Steelers. So a couple of really big games coming up for the Colts as they try to finish out strong this season.
State championships over the weekend. Indiana football, of course, the big one, the 6A title game. Taven Jackson, Caden Curry, and that group from Center Grove, they left no doubt, man. They took away their 6A state title, and Carson Steele, he ran for 138 yards. Did you watch any of those games, Dylan?
I saw. I was not there, but I did see the 1A and 2A games, which both featured teams from the Northeast Indiana area up here in Fort Wayne that we covered. Both of those games were 1-point games, some of the best games I've seen all season. So those were a lot of fun.
Was that one? Was Western Boone? Is that one of the Western Boone games? One on a field goal?
Yes, Western Boone won 36-35. They beat Bishop Luers up there in 2A, and then 1A Covenant Christian beat South Adams 41-40. In a battle of unbeatens that was just fantastic all the way around. So that was a lot of fun. Some of those smaller schools getting some shine on the big stage.
I just got to see the 6A game, and man, Center Grove was like watching a machine. They were machine-like. They did not make mistakes. They just offensively, it was just like watching practice. they were running practice routes because everything was just perfect. And I'm like, wow. But fun to watch that team. And they've got most of their skill players. I don't want to say most of their skill players, but Taven Jackson, he's a junior. I think their defensive ends are juniors. It's like, holy cow. Team could be loaded, man. But we got a lot more to get to. Let's see. We'll hear from Tom Allen later on. Basketball going on all week. Providence is, like I was talking with Don Fisher earlier, Dylan. That's a tough. We're going to talk about that in the next segment as well. But that's a tough start for this Indiana team, especially after watching them the other night. They were lacking. The rebounding is going to be a problem today. Providence got a big 6'10" dude in the middle who can throw some weight around, and that's going to be something Indiana's going to have to get around. And as I was talking with Don, they've got good guard play. Indiana's going to have to knock down shots because Providence does do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about the 6'10" guy in the middle. That's Nate Watson. He's extremely talented. Ed Cooley said he's one of the most physical guys they've ever had at Providence. But the key with Providence is that he's not the only big guy. They have 4 other guys in their rotation that are 6'8". So they have a lot of size. And IU really doesn't. They have Trace, they have Race, and maybe Joey Brunk if he's healthy. We don't know. So they are going to need to do, as Archie Miller said, he was concerned about the rebounding after the game against Tennessee Tech. They are going to have to do a much better job on the boards to get themselves some extra opportunities, especially if they're not knocking down shots, as you said.
Let's take a break here. As you're listening to Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from hole number 6, the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you here on this Monday from hole number 6, Golf Club Eagle Point Studios. Dylan Sim from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette sitting in as always. We've been talking to Don Fisher and Matt Taylor. Tons going on. We were talking in the break about these Big Ten games over the weekend. I cannot believe that Purdue loses to Rutgers. I don't care who gets hurt or this and that. It's Rutgers who are still, yes, they're on the rise, but dude, they're paying Jeff Brom $1 million per win, basically. That it's not happening. It's not working at Purdue. I know there's been tons of injuries but man, this is the second season. It's just been a spin your wheels kind of a deal.
It's been a tough year for Purdue. They started out so well. They started out 2-0. They beat Iowa in week 1. And that just seemed like it was going to really jumpstart them this year. And then they played Northwestern tough. They had a chance to win that game. They got hosed against Minnesota with that call at the end. Rutgers was really a baffling game for Purdue. They were up 30-20. And then Rutgers returned the kickoff for a touchdown. Purdue lost their best linebacker to a targeting call. And after that, they really struggled to stop the Scarlet Knights, who were playing with their third-string quarterback. That was the tough part for this defense at Purdue, was that Rutgers was playing with a third-string quarterback who was basically running a wildcat offense, and he was just running at them for about 5 yards a carry. And it was tough to watch down the stretch. They just couldn't get a stop at all against a team that has not moved the ball very well this season. So that's tough for Jeff Brom. Now they've had 2 games with Rondell Moore and David Bell in the lineup. Those are 2 All-American guys, and they are 0-2 in those games with both of those guys on the outside. So it's been a tough stretch for Purdue here.
And let's see, who was it? We saw the wide receiver for Minnesota opt back out. Was that the same guy that opted out at the beginning of the year, opted back in?
That's a good question. Was that Rashad Bateman? Because he opted out. Yeah.
I think it was. So
yeah, he's the same.
We've seen that at other teams too. We've seen it teams that weren't doing well, which that really bothers me. It's because your team's not playing well and you're going to quit in the middle of the season. I see that as just being a quitter. But Northwestern, man, that surprised me that they lose to Michigan State. Michigan State, of course, playing a little bit better, but Indiana just smoked them 24-0. And Northwestern has their own destiny in their hands with the easiest. You want to talk about the easiest road to the Big Ten championship game in the history of the Big Ten championship game? It is Northwestern's path, and they just fell down over themselves this weekend. They are at the 5-yard line and they tripped and fell. That is exactly what they did. It's all you can say, because this is a team, and I can't wait to get Dustin Schutte on Thursday, because he kept, but I thought Northwestern was going to lose the Minnesota game, but he's like, oh, you can't fall into that trap, Northwestern. I'm like, yeah, this is the Northwestern. I knew it. But anyway, it's shocking. I just couldn't believe that they lost that game because of what they had to play for, and they're a cerebral team. This is, that they're smart kids. Or for Northwestern, Fitzgerald's a good coach. He does a good job. This was a surprise, man.
It really was, especially since Michigan State had looked barely functional since beating Michigan. So that's a really surprising result. Northwestern, they still have, to be clear, they still have the inside track on the Big Ten title game. If they win their last two, they will be there over Wisconsin, who they have the head-to-head tiebreaker over. But yeah, that is a tough game for Northwestern. I know some Northwestern fans were dreaming about maybe backing into a playoff spot if they had gone undefeated.
Give me a break.
Undefeated in the Big Ten and then beaten Ohio
playoffs
in the title game.
Playoffs.
But yeah, I think that closes the door on that, unfortunately, for Wildcat fans. But yeah, that is a tough defeat for a team that really looked like it was kind of going to cruise into the championship game here. Now they have no. We talk about margin for error. They have no margin for error anymore either. They have to win these last two.
No, and I still go back to my point that I think the Big Ten. Well, this would have required them to do something that made sense too. But there should be no divisions this year. You're not using the scheduling anyway. It doesn't matter who you play and who you win or lose against. So why does it matter what division you're in? I think the two best teams should go, which would be Ohio State and Indiana. And Indiana could still end up being the second best, which they are the second best team in the league. But record-wise, they could still end up being second best and not get to go. While you've got Northwestern losing to a Michigan State team that Indiana destroyed. So it's just weird. But I think it would be I would like to see Indiana get that opportunity to go this year because it will not affect Ohio State's college football playoffs. And so I think it would be nice to see a different, it would be kind of cool. It would be just different to see. Of course, I'm biased in regards that I would get to go cover that game, of course. So there's some bias there, but I think it would be good for the league.
Yeah. I wonder how much the league would, how the ratings would be for an Indiana Northwestern
terrible,
championship game.
Awful.
Yeah, they'd probably be bad, and so I'm sure the league does not really want that to happen.
They do not.
I was surprised the league announced that the championship game is going to be at 11 o'clock in the morning. I wonder what went into that decision, because that was surprising to me. These games are usually in prime time, and then to have it at 11 in the morning, that was
Big Ten is usually one of the marquee primetime games of the primetime games.
Yes, that was just very, very surprising to me, and so I wonder if that'll affect the ratings as well. But 11 o'clock in the morning.
Are they already planning for it being Indiana Northwestern? Is that why they're like, oh, hey man, let's move this out?
that would not surprise me. That is the perfect time for Indiana and Northwestern to play a championship game. 11 in the morning, right when people are waking up, they're eating their breakfast and turning on to watch Indiana try to score against Northwestern's defense.
I mean but think about being a player. How that's rough. I mean, you got to get up. It's an hours and hours of process before the game. So you're just not used to playing games that early. Of course, they say that's just an hour earlier. Yeah, but when you're on the front end, that hour, that's a big difference between 11 and 12 than it is from 2 and 3, or the otherwise. So that would be and a championship. Why do that on a championship game? You usually try to make things as good as they can be for a championship game to hopefully you get the best product you can get. But at 11 a.m. Big Ten championship, and again, reasoning you can't even give me a TV reason for that. Unless there's a bunch of big time basketball games that day that they think are going to trump, but football usually gets out ratings than basketball, so that's a weird deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I would wonder if there's some kind of deal they had with the TV with the TV station with Fox, I believe it's on, that they broadcast at that time for some reason when they signed the contract with Fox. But yeah, I have no idea. It's a very weird time. I mean, there's other championship games that day, so maybe Fox is trying to kind of line them up all in a row, make it a big championship Saturday. But yeah, I would love to hear some rationale for that, because you're right, it is tough for the players. It changes their internal clock, it changes their preparation. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how whoever's in the championship handles that.
Earlier, I was talking about the uniqueness of Michigan and Jim Harbaugh holding Ryan Day's fate in his hands. That's for real, though. I mean, after all the guff that they took, I mean, that because think back when Ryan Day was saying we're gonna kick your you know what, and we're gonna put 100 on you. When you have a coach say that, that's big. So that hasn't been forgotten. Harbaugh's got an I mean, you know that they can't do that. It's not like they can say, hey, we're just going to cancel the game for obvious reasons. But, man, it would be – it's not like it can't happen.
Right.
It's not like it can't happen. And how funny would that be?
It
would be funny to Ohio State fans.
It would not. I do wonder how that would affect Michigan's recruiting. You don't want to be seen to be ducking a team, especially your main rival like Ohio State. You don't want to be seen to be ducking them. I wonder how that would reflect recruiting.
If it happened legitimately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if it comes out that Michigan has some kind of COVID scare and they genuinely can't play. That would
probably don't have to worry about it. I mean, Ohio State's probably their own worst enemy right now.
Yeah,
I would imagine. I mean, you said that no matter what, you would think that they're going to march a team out this week, no matter what.
Right.
But they can only do that if they can do that. We've seen teams that had their entire quarterback room wiped out. That would be an issue.
Right. And the thing is, the pattern that we've seen in the Big Ten this year, when a team has to cancel games, is they usually have to cancel 2 games back to back. So for Ohio State, that would be Illinois and Michigan State. And then the third game, they usually come back, but they're still missing significant pieces in those games, as Maryland was against Indiana this week, because they missed the last 2 return. So it would be interesting to see if Michigan plays Ohio State in that final game. Ohio State has already been eliminated from Big Ten title contention, but they're playing Michigan. How that game would play out, because Michigan has, unlike Michigan State, Michigan has the athletes to cause some problems for Ohio State if Ohio State is not playing with its full team. So it would be interesting to see if Michigan could really play a spoiler this season, knock Ohio State not only out of the Big Ten championship game, but out of the college football playoff with a surprise upset win, because Ohio State's missing some guys with COVID. It would be interesting to see how that played out.
Or Ohio State is eliminated from Big Ten championship because they miss a game before the Michigan game. And then they have the Michigan game and it's played and they hang 100 on Michigan because they need some style points for the college football playoffs. Maybe the 100 thing comes to fruition because that could put them in a position where they need to show we are a bad team.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. They would need some style points. I doubt, based on everything we've seen, I doubt that Ohio State would take his foot off the gas at any point in that game.
I wonder though. I mean, how badly do you really think that they would try to beat them?
That's a great question. I mean, go back to, 1969, 1970, where Michigan had ruined Ohio State's national title hopes the year before with an upset win. And then Woody Hayes went out there and hung 50 on Michigan. And at the end of the game, he went for 2 after a touchdown up by 40 points. And they asked him why he went for 2 after the game. And he said, because I couldn't go for 3. That's the type of rivalry this is. There's no playing for the cameras here. These teams genuinely don't like each other. Never have.
And I love that. And it should be that way because that's what college sports is about. We don't have that right now. I don't see that with Purdue in basketball, some in football because Indiana's competitive and Purdue's not really that competitive. But when rivalries can only be fun if both sides are competitive. And that Michigan-Ohio State rivalry it's not fun for them right now.
No,
I can't believe that because that's one of those that you thought would never go bad. But the Purdue-Indiana rivalry is not great right now because Indiana's lost 6 straight to Purdue. It's got to get back to being competitive. Indiana's been kind of dominating Purdue in football. I mean, they won 4 straight and they've won again. So Indiana's won like 5 or 6 of the last 7 on that side. So been dominant, but as long as they don't get too far out, they'll stay fine. But it's not what they used to be. We don't have the rivalries in the Big Ten that we used to be. You used to have Bob Knight and Gene Katie and just there were so many characters and don't really have so much of that anymore. And it takes a little bit of flavor out.
Yeah, it's definitely a little more buttoned up than it used to be. I wonder. Ryan Day was obviously trying to infuse a little bit of extra juice into the rivalry with his comments about hanging 100 on Michigan. So maybe that adds a little bit to it. I'll tell you that it's been tough for Michigan. They have not won a game against Ohio State without Ohio State being on probation since 2003. It has been a long time. So Michigan would love to get a win this year.
Absolutely. Hey, we got to take a quick break. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat. We're coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Monday. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back here on this Monday. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Dylan Sin from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette sitting in now. We were just talking in the break about the football team and what's Michael Penix. We will find out here today. A little more, hopefully. We were just talking, and I saw him walk into the locker room. He was hobbling, but he was unassisted. He was limping, of course, but it's not like he was carted off or being helped off. He was not even being helped at all. He was walking, so not sure. We don't know what it is. A lower leg injury is what Tom Allen said. But we'll find out more about that. A lot of people are guessing, and there's no point in really guessing, and they don't like for you to do that anyway, so we won't. But that just means it's a knee or an ankle, but it didn't. There's no point in even guessing. Well, now, will they have him back or not? We can guess about that until tomorrow. Well, I can promise you another thing. That's an answer that won't be given probably until Saturday, maybe.
Yeah.
If things are like they have been in the past, and I would do the same. Why not? If you can use it for your advantage or going away, anything you can get for your advantage right now, use it. As they'll be going on the road. But and the break I was talking, I don't think they lose a lot with Jack Tuttle right now if he can make the throws, because Michael Penix has not been running much, and as we talked about, Dylan, until that 21-yard run there where he got hurt on. He's been staying pretty much in the pocket to staying protected, and it's done a good job. But the defense has done such a remarkable job that they've had a good offensive run, but it's not been like spectacular Heisman numbers here. He's not running, so he's just been killing him with his arm. Tuttle can step in and manage it, and that's what, if you have a defense that is playing elite level, that's what you need. You need to manage the game.
Yeah, and that's what we saw against Maryland when Tuttle came in. Was Indiana did not ask him to do very much at all. They gave him some very simple throws to make, and he made them. To his credit, he made all of the throws, put them right on the money, moved them down the field, and they
scoring drives.
Exactly, and they mixed in the run game. That might be a big key for Indiana, is the fact they were able to get some momentum in that run game, and be able to move the ball a little bit on the ground to take some pressure off of Tuttle. Because they weren't able to do that earlier in the year. We saw them have -1 rushing yard against Ohio State. So if they can move the ball a little bit with traditional running game or with that Wildcat formation, that'll take a lot of pressure off the new quarterback coming in. If he does have to play, we still don't know if it's going to be Tuttle on Saturday. So,
and if he does, this is not just somebody that they found off the waiver wire from a JUCO transfer. Jack Tuttle is an elite level quarterback.
Yes, people. There was a lot of fanfare when he came in, and for good reason. He was the number 7 quarterback in the entire 2018 recruiting class. He went to a lot of elite camps when he was in high school and things like that. So he's a very talented guy. He finished 3rd in that quarterback competition last year behind Penix and Peyton Ramsey. But there's not a whole lot of shame in that. He was a redshirt freshman. We know how talented Penix is, and Ramsey was the experienced guy. So. Tuttle is very, very talented. He can run this offense. It's just a question of, can they give him enough help on defense and in the run game?
Absolutely. But it was if it was going to happen, I'd say it was good that it happened early enough that Jack Tuttle got to come in, and Noah 4:17 is the time mark on that sound bite I meant to tell you about. I forgot. So grab that at the 4:17 mark. But Tom Allen, that's the question I asked him, and it was like early in the 3rd quarter when this happened. So Tuttle comes in. He has to play a good portion of the game. He was 5 of 5 throwing. Michael Penix was 6 of 14. So he almost completed as many passes in that short amount of time, doing it in a managed role. But but he did a very good job. But these are 3 scoring drives too. That's repetition, and it's game repetition that you cannot replicate in practice.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the important part, as Tom Allen told you. So that's the thing is that they got him some reps in game, and that's going to probably do wonders for his confidence if he does have to play this week against Wisconsin, who is a talented defense. Let's be clear about that. Wisconsin has done a very good job on the defensive end this year. So we'll have to see how Tuttle looks under the bright lights. Although, again, Penix might be healthy, and we might be talking about nothing here.
Yeah, Noah, if you've got that clip from Tom Allen, let's grab that. I asked him about the Jack Tuttle situation and about the slow starts to the offense.
We just really proud of him. Worked hard, and we good for him to play. Like you said, those meaningful minutes. It wasn't one good time. It was a critical time to be able to execute and make some good throws and make some good throws. Got to cover that. But I got to look at the slow start of offense with our defense. If you would say slow from the perspective of giving up some yards, but we weren't slow from the perspective of giving up points, which at the end of the day is all that matters. So you always have to adjust. I mean, they did some different things that we hadn't seen, which is typical, especially that they had some little extra time for us, and they knew they weren't playing last week. So to be able to do some things, but obviously they've had some challenges. So bottom line is you adjust, and our guys did that. But to figure out.
There's Tom Allen talking about that very thing, but they also the offense, even with Michael Penix, last couple of weeks, slow starts against Ohio State. They were down 35-7 before they came roaring back, but you can't put yourself in that kind of a hole. And didn't happen this week only because they weren't playing Ohio State and the defense was playing lights out. But again, a slow start. This was even weirder though, and we talked about this earlier. No idea if Michael Penix was not actually. I don't. There's no reason to think he was injured. His throws they were just bad off. But it's still such a weird thing when I think back on it because they were not even close.
Well, and that is what's so confusing about that first half, because he was so bad in that first half compared to what he was against Ohio State, and then he came out in the second half, and he before he got hurt, he had 4 throws, easy routes. All of them were perfect, right on the money, marched IU right down the field. And it was just the most confusing game I've ever seen from a quarterback because it was not at all what you expected going into the game. And then the second half was about as perfect as you can get before he got hurt. So I just have no idea what was going on with that. Again, very slow start for Indiana. A better team than Maryland would have taken advantage of it, and IU probably would have been down by 2 touchdowns at one point in that game. So they are lucky that Maryland was not able to score on either of their trips to the red zone. Obviously, some of that is to the defense's credit, standing tall and getting an interception when Talia Tagovailoa threw one into coverage. But yeah, that's something that has to get cleaned up and get this team moving forward as soon as the game starts going ahead here.
How about the takeaways by this defense? I think it's 18 right now. That's in 7 games. I think that is
6 games.
6 games. I think that is 4 or 5 more than they had all of last season. I think they had 13 last year.
Yeah.
All of last year, all 13 games.
Yeah, I mean, it was an off-season point of emphasis because they did not think they were taking the ball away enough. We heard this a lot, especially from Brandon Shelby, the secondary coach, and they really have emphasized taking the ball away and giving the offense extra opportunities. And they are leading the country in interceptions now with 16. I don't think any of us saw that coming into the season, saw that happening. Jalen Williams has 4 interceptions by himself. Tywan Mullen finally has a couple picks after not having any last year. As talented as he is, that was very surprising. So, Indiana has done a great job, and that has really kept them in some games. And especially against Ohio State, when it looked like Ohio State would run away with it, getting those interceptions was huge.
Yeah, when you're taking the ball away from the other team, it's kind of hard for them to score. So, and again, manage the offense, and they did a good job of that against Wisconsin. You're going to go up against an offense that can throw the ball, but they can also run that ball. So Indiana's going to be – they may be tested – they're not more than they were against Ohio State, of course, but this may be the second biggest test that they've had this year, I think.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obviously true. The tough part for Wisconsin is we don't really know a whole lot about this Badgers team. They've played 3 games this year. One of them was against Illinois. You can kind of throw that one out because Illinois was really struggling at the time. One of them was against Michigan, who also was just awful in that
Did
game.
we ever even see their starting quarterback?
We
Their
did
original starting quarterback?
We did not. He was hurt in preseason, not a COVID issue. But their redshirt freshman Graham Mertz is a 5-star recruit. He's very, very talented.
But he's third string, right? He was third string, right?
Oh, he was second string. They were
okay.
Yeah, they were almost had to play their 4th string quarterback before they played their 3rd game of the year because they had a rash of COVID go through the quarterback room. But Graham Mertz, the starter, is back now. He's played very well. It's actually not a typical Wisconsin team. You talked about them running the ball. They are not as good of a rushing offense as they usually are this year. They get it done through the air. Their offensive line is still very good. They just don't have a great, talented running back like a Melvin Gordon or a Jonathan Taylor.
Hey, we got to take one more break before we get out of here. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat here on this Monday, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Dylan Sin from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette sitting in. Man, we have got Indiana basketball on tap here this afternoon. Don Fisher on the call. That's the way to listen to the Indiana games, is they're taking on a Providence team that this is not an easy game. This is not going to be an easy tournament period for Indiana, Dylan. Indiana, we saw them in the game against Tennessee. They have some rebounding deficiencies right now, especially exacerbated if you don't have the services of Joey Brunk.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. And Archie Miller said that Brunk probably could have played against Tennessee Tech if it had been an emergency. The fact that they kept him out for that game, maybe they were trying to make sure that he's healthy for Maui. We don't know. But yeah, if they don't have him, that is going to be a significant loss because we talked about earlier. Providence is a very big team. They have a lot of size all over the front lines. Nate Watson at center is 6'10", extremely skilled and extremely physical. So Indiana is going to need to be as physical as possible on the boards. We talked about that before. Archie Miller, I thought it was interesting. After the Tennessee Tech game, no one asked about the rebounding. Archie Miller brought that up on his own, unprompted, twice. In the post-game press conference saying, we are not a good enough rebounding team right now. I believe he used the word deficient to describe his team's rebounding effort against Tennessee Tech. So that is something that I'm sure they worked on a lot in practice leading up to this tournament. And if Joey Brunk can't play, that is going to put just that much more on Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson. Jordan Geronimo is another guy that they're going to need to step in there and maybe use some of his athleticism to go crash the boards and make things difficult for the Providence front line.
Part of not having these traditional non-con games that you would normally get is you play a lot more of the Tennessee Techs before you play the Providences of the world. And the deficiencies that the Tennessee Tech game exposed gives you a little more time to work on that. They don't have that this year. It's you got to get to business right now. And unfortunately, you have to do what you can in between in the practice that you just mentioned they have, but then you're going to have to do the rest in the game situation. They're going to have to work on it as they go in Maui, in Asheville, because it obviously is not something, if you were doing that badly, you're not going to fix it in 2 days. You're going to have to do it in the game situation, but hopefully you can do it in a manner that allows you to put yourself in a position to still win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we're going to, it's Indiana is a team that has so many new pieces, and they're working them all in together. We saw all 4 freshmen play at the same time at one point against Tennessee Tech. It's going to be interesting to see how that chemistry looks against a team that is much more talented and can obviously give the Hoosiers a game. So we'll see how the rotations work, because Archie Miller said before the season it's going to take some trial and error to figure out who works best together and what lineups work best, because Indiana can play very small. They can play a bigger lineup, but we'll have to see what works best against Providence. That, again, is a very large team with also skilled guards.
And then before that game, you can catch, was it Texas and
Texas and Davidson, yeah.
That's an unknown game. I mean, you know, Shaka Smart in Texas. Shaka Smart's been kind of on the hot seat. He hasn't things haven't worked out for him down there, but hey, he's still there, so he can. Here's an opportunity for him if he can get some quality wins. So there's a team you got to look out for, and Indiana will play the winner of this game tomorrow. Davidson's always one of those teams you don't hear about until the NCAA tournament rolls around, and all of a sudden, boom, they'll win a game or two and fun. So. They're one of those teams and we've seen some games. Who was it? Michigan. Who did they play? It was at Oakland University they were playing.
Oakland, yeah, and they went to overtime.
Overtime, baby.
Yeah, that was.
Oh.
We've seen teams get upset. Richmond beat Kentucky yesterday.
Yeah, they did by 12.
Yes. And so there has been some parity across the college basketball landscape this year. So Indiana cannot afford to take any team lightly, especially Davidson, if that ends up being who their opponent is on Tuesday. So you don't want to look too far ahead as an Indiana fan, but if you want to get a glimpse of tomorrow's opponent, as you said, if they win, they play the winner of Texas Davidson. If they lose, they play the loser of Texas Davidson. So either way, that the opponent for Indiana on Tuesday will be in that game if you'd like to get an early view of who the Hoosiers will be playing in their second game in Maui.
If I asked someone what they wanted to see from this game today, of course, the most important thing is just simply a win. Indiana just needs to find a way to win this game. But along the way, you'd sure like to see them do it by hitting their free throws, by hitting some shots. They took care of the ball against Tennessee Tech, as Don Fisher earlier referred to, which that's a great sign right there because that's something you don't have to work on. But they've got other things that they do have to do, and you'd like to see them start that now. Hitting free throws, man, I'm so sick and tired of talking about that. It's the most ridiculous thing because it's just 90% mental. Because they're in there practicing. We know they're practicing all the time. So if you're practicing the mechanics and your mechanics are okay and they haven't been changed, then that tells me it's mental. It's all mental. And why is it still mental? I don't know. I can't answer that, but.
Yeah, it's frustrating for IU. I'm sure it's frustrating for the players too. They were 10 for 22 at the free throw line against Tennessee Tech. That's just not going to get it done. Trace Jackson Davis struggled from the line himself. He said after the game that he needs to get better at that. So that's something we'd love to see Indiana do well against Providence. As you talked about the turnovers, they didn't turn the ball over against Tennessee Tech, but they weren't particularly strong with the basketball either, in my opinion. There was a lot of plays where Tennessee Tech got in the passing lanes and got a hand on balls that Indiana kind of came up with and got back. And I think against a better team, those would have been turnovers. So Indiana needs to make sure they're crisp with their passes, taking care of the ball, and try to get out in transition. That's something that Archie Miller has wanted his team to do all offseason. They did it against Tennessee Tech. Trey Galloway was very good at that, especially. So if they can get out in transition, get some easy baskets, that would neutralize a lot of Providence's height advantage and their rebounding advantage.
And another thing is this season, we heard Archie Miller talk about the transition game and that how important it was and that was going to be something that they were going to be employing. And I saw that for maybe 2 minutes in that Tennessee Tech game, and that was it again. So I'm like, okay, are they doing that or are they not doing that? Or is it because, wait a minute, things aren't working on the other end, so you're just backing up a little bit now, but are they a transition team or not? I'm confused again.
Yeah. Well, Trey Galloway was the first freshman off the bench, and I was a little surprised by that to start, just because because Christian Lander had gotten a lot of the hype, and then Jordan Geronimo was one of the best athletes that Archie Miller had ever recruited. But Trey Galloway was almost certainly in that game early because they'd seen how much he runs the floor and how well he runs the floor in practice, and they probably told him, get out there and get up and down the floor, which he absolutely did. He got 4 buckets in transition in the first half alone, 4 for 4, 9 points. And he kind of gave the team a little bit of a spark. And so that's something that they would love to see him do a lot more as the season goes on. He's not a finished product, but he's someone that can help you in that transition game because he just has so much energy. And as soon as that ball goes off the board and Indiana gets a rebound, he's off and into the floor on the secondary break. So that's important for Indiana going forward.
He's going to be an outstanding player for Indiana University. I think that is clear. When you can come in as a freshman and in your debut game score double digits, and these are not mop-up minutes, or you're not getting 6 free throws in the last 3 minutes. These were legit, like you pointed out, this is first half stuff. These were real minutes against a real team in your freshman year. You were playing high school last year. Months ago, you were playing high school. Now you're in Assembly Hall. And to be able to do that mentally, he's there. So he's going to be a good one. Christian Lander, he looked good when he came in. He looked confident. He only went 1 for 4 or whatever, but it doesn't matter. He hit his first one and he looked smooth and just confident. And confidence is more important sometimes than accuracy. Not over the long haul, I guess, but you got to have that start. Where are we? We're almost out of there. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do today. But this is going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we said all offseason this team was going to take a little bit to gel. So you kind of want to make sure that there's not a sky is falling mentality if they don't win this game. But you'd like to go out and see them do what they want to do: take care of the ball, get out in transition, and hit some shots. And those are the 3 things. Even if they don't win, if they go out and do those 3 things, you can feel a little bit good about this game. Obviously, you'd like to have the win, but what you more want to see is them gelling a little bit as a team and doing the things that they wanted to do. And that'll be the key today.
Well, man, I'm looking forward to it. We get to watch some basketball. Of course, I'm going to watch that Texas and Davidson game first, and then there's games after that. North Carolina is in this tournament. Alabama is in this tournament. I can't remember who all is in it. Who else is? A couple other names.
Stanford's in it. UNLV is in it, and I believe it's those 6 that you said, and Stanford and UNLV.
That's a lot of good basketball teams, man. It's going to be a tough tournament. Looking forward to that. Tomorrow, Kevin Brockway will be in. Of course, Mike DeCourcy will join us. Looking forward to Mike as always, and Chronic Hoosier as he joins us each and every Tuesday. But we're going to have basketball all week to talk about, man. That's going to be fun. Dylan, you won't be with us, but we'll have basketball to talk about all week. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, absolutely. It's going to be some good early season tests for Indiana. We'll kind of see where this team stands right now and how much they need to get better as the season goes on here.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate Don Fisher. Thanks to Matt Taylor as well. We'll appreciate you most importantly. Join us tomorrow, of course, when Kevin Brockway and Mike DeCourcy and Chronic Hoosier is on with us. But until then, please do something nice for somebody. Wear your mask. And until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.